Hi everybody, this is Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy, and welcome to the Journeyman, Chapter 7. So, I apologize, it's been about a month since we've continued this story, alright? So I've got a couple things for you right off the beginning here. A couple of books, and I promoted these before, but I know I have a lot of new members. If you really are into manufacturing, this book on Henry Ford called Henry Ford, the Reluctant Capitalist is excellent reading. You'll hear more about my mother-in-law soon, but I was down before she passed away a few years ago, helping her with her computer, right? And I said, why do you have a book about Henry Ford? Because it's not her genre. And she said, my college roommate wrote this. Well, it's a wonderful book. And I gave her book back, and I ordered my own, and unbelievably it was signed by her roommate. Okay, this is an incredible story. It's really that good. I still pick this up some nights and just go pick a chapter, and the stuff these guys were doing in the 30s is shocking. All right. Well, he had a fellow that was his right-hand man, and this fellow's name was Charles Sorensen. And like my grandfather, he was a pattern maker, which was a big deal back in the day before CNC. When you wanted something 3D, you had to learn how to make models of that in wood, and either make a sand casting for die casts or forgings and things like that, or sand castings. But you would make a wooden model, okay, push that into the sand, pull it out, dump the iron in. Well, if you followed me, Henry Ford really couldn't read blueprints, all right? So a pattern maker was his best friend. Well, this guy, this Swede, started off with Henry Ford and saw his 40 years, from like 1906 to 1903, I think, to 1943. Saw the whole thing. And he writes like an engineer. It's a kind of a hard book to find, but it's wonderful. In fact, I gave this to one of the bosses at work. I showed it to him. He's more of a audiobook guy. He literally came down a month later and said, that was so good. And he's kind of a brainiac type of guy. So two great books, My 40 Years with Ford and Henry Ford, The Reluctant Capitalist. If you're into manufacturing, boy, two good books. All right, so moving right along with the Journeyman. So as you know, as I mentioned before, I do have a join button down there. And I know life is expensive right now. And you picked a very expensive trade to belong to. So I'm trying to keep this very affordable, but for $3.99 a month, you can follow me around the shop, and I'm also uploading some of my library from the toolanddieguy.com. There's 23 videos on there so far, and tonight I critique some drawings. That's going to go up there, members only, and I feel much safer about doing that. You know, I don't want to put anybody under the bus, and I know I block out the names or everything, but I know the subscription site, I'll be safer there to really let things fly, all right? So check that out. You won't regret it, I promise you, okay? All right, so we're going to start off tonight. I'm going to go through a couple of drawers of my toolbox. You guys love looking at my tools. And I have a story. Now, I will always tell you if I'm going to tell a story that's just funny for your entertainment. Well, this one's kind of funny, but the other thing is this one could keep you out of prison. So this is a manufacturing story, all right? So if you've looked at my website at all or watched any of my previous videos, there's this barn that comes up, Kerner Tool and Die, all right? And my Uncle Eddie started this tool and die shop back in like 1944, I believe, and he bought this giant piece of property in Erie, Pennsylvania, in Harbor Creek, PA, which is about 5 miles outside of Erie, if that. And back then, there wasn't a lot out there. It was a big dairy farm. So he buys this thing, this barn, and a couple of houses were on it, and starts a tool and die shop with my dad. My dad was the general manager. The years go by, and as my uncle's business grew, he would just add on to the dairy barn. You can imagine at the block buildings, but the dairy barn right in the middle, right? Hence, if you watch the Journeyman, any of these, that's probably why it burned down. But I digress. Well, about 1966 or 7, he blew outside of the shop, put another addition on, and decided upstairs we had this wonderful ballroom where all my cousins had their a dance hall. Hardwood floors, knotty pine walls, really cool place. And all my cousins had their wedding receptions up there. So he blows out a wall and puts in the Vegas room. Now, it might look cheesy now, but it was very Vegas-y back then. So Eddie puts in the crap tables and the poker tables. Well, Eddie gets this bright idea. Wouldn't it be cool to have really cool poker chips? So he decides, I don't know what casino he got some poker chips from, that he's going to duplicate them and make his own poker chips for upstairs. I'm convinced there was nothing nefarious going on here. He just wanted, I don't know which place it was, the Sands, Caesar's Palace. So, because they were tracing experts at Critter Tool and Die, my brother Freddie, beautiful brother Freddie, he's working there at night, and he would set up these poker chips, and they would engrave them, trace them into graphite, make them into electrodes. You take the electrode, you burn it into a piece of steel, and now you've got a plastic injection mold. The beautiful part is the electrode always looks like the part. And then when you burn it into the mold, electrode discharge machining, it burns it backwards, upside down, and then when it comes back out of the mold, it's reading the right way. This is why tool makers always had, back in those days, silly putty in their drawer just to check things once in a while, because we had to kind of think in reverse a lot back then, all right? Reverse image, the negative. So, it's like January 1967. My brother Freddie would have been like 25, 26 years old, and he's in the shop by himself, working nights. And he's doing his own work at the EDM department, but he's also keeping this little tracing machine running when he hears on the door at like 1 in the morning. So he looks out the window, and there's like 2 state cop cars and 2 black cars and a couple guys in fedoras getting out of the cars. He's like, oh my God. Now he's a pretty smart guy. He immediately calls my Uncle Eddie, who lives next door, and no answer. So he runs over to the tracing machine, shuts it off, grabs the electrodes and the poker chip, puts them under a rag in a box, shuts that off. Looks in the back, and he sees the plastic press is still running, pumping out more chips. Shuts that off. You saw my lesson a couple weeks ago. It was a master unit die. Unhooks it, picks it up, opens a window at the shop, and throws the die out in the snowdrift. It's 12 degrees outside. Picks up the poker chips, throws those out the window. Still getting the bang on the door. Runs back over, calls Uncle Eddie again. No answer. Finally, he goes and answers the door. Guys got their ID. They said, why did you answer the door? He said, hey, I'm working in the back of the shop. He said, I just came up to wash my hands. I heard you guys. What's up? He said, we need to look around. So the G-men show up to the U.S. Treasury and the state cops. They're walking through the shop, and they're just looking at stuff. Well, they go out back where the plastic press was running, and the light on the press is flashing red, which tells people that their operation is stalled out, stopped. The one cop says, detective, whatever, says, why is that light flashing? And my brother says, I don't know. He said, I don't run that machine. He says, it's probably out of plastic. All right. They're walking by, and my brother looks up, and he left the window open. It's 12 degrees outside in January, and the window was open where he threw the mold out in the snowdrift. Nobody caught it. All these brilliant detectives never said, hey, why is the window open? All right. So they all left, and all of a sudden my Uncle Eddie walked into the shop. My brother's like, where the hell were you? I called you like 5 times. He says, oh, I was looking out the window. I knew exactly what was going on here, and I didn't want anything to do with it. So that was the end of the poker chips at the Critter Tool and Die Company and in the dance hall upstairs, the Vegas room. But the lesson is, once you get good at this trade, especially, you can make anything. You get really good at this after some years. The world is your oyster. Do not mess with anything that has anything to do with currency. I don't care if it's poker chips, anything that can be redeemed for monetary value. The Secret Service does get involved. I started my shop in 1991, like 1996. I get some guys I knew walked in, a couple car dealers, with this worn out Caesar's Palace die. And they said, can you kind of dull this up? And I looked at it, I said, it's too worn out. I said, I would need the original. And that's how I got out of it being nice, but I'm thinking, hell no, I'm not doing that. Well, 4 or 5 months later, all 4 of those guys were in the second section of the Erie paper, all arrested for counterfeiting, okay? So that's the lesson. Don't ever, ever duplicate coinage or anything that can be redeemed for monetary value. I have to say, my brother Freddie handled that pretty well, because he was kind of a jumpy guy, and handled it like a pretty cool cat. So that is the story. Stay out of jail, okay? And that was my community service. So let's take a look at my toolboxes tonight, a couple drawers, and I'll see you at the end. All right, so these are fairly new. I bought some digitals probably 5 or 6, 7 years ago, and I like them. They're kind of cumbersome. They're very large. These are auto-ones. This is a very old set that I bought, auto-one Starretts. These finally wore out. I think I replaced these like 20 years ago. The first set lasted me like 25 years ago. And then this is a spare set. This is actually a Brown and Sharp set. Sometimes I like 2 pair because I might be doing a little production job where I just get tired of opening, closing, for a wall that's or a dimension that's 100 and another dimension that's 900. So that's handy. These are original equipment I bought in 1980, auto-one Brown and Sharps. These are 2 to 3. Let's see, 1 to 2s. No, let's see. I'm so sorry. 1 to 2 Brown and Sharps, 2 to 3 Starretts. Again, 1980. These are actually the shops, but I use them enough. I just keep them. 3 to 4s. Starrett anvil mics, step mics, whatever you want to call them. They're disassembled here, but everything I need is right there. Now, you might say, hey Phil, why don't you put them back in the box you have for them? You know, here's the deal. They're in a box already, right? They're well protected with this wooden box. And instead of opening the box and opening another box, this is just the way I work. A little time saver. Toolmaker I used to work with did the same thing. He had his, he was really good. And he had all his def mic rods just floating around. I'm a little more organized than that. But and then this box here, this should be just the wrenches for these things, for adjustments. And then over here, that's another video. These are the little ball end clips that you can put on the end when you're measuring inside and outside tubes and things like that. There's different ones in here because Starrett and Mitutoyo and Brown and Sharp all have a slightly different handle size. I'll do another video on this. Obviously my hands are full right now. But what those do is clip on, usually onto your solid anvil, not the movable one. Then you add or subtract 200 thousandths from what you're reading. But I've done a video on that before, but that's what those are for, okay? And then got my camphor block back there. This looks like a 1-inch standard. Yeah, that came with these mics many moons ago. So that's my micrometer drawer, okay? All right, so what's in this drawer? First thing we have here is a nice set of Lufkin inside micrometers. I'll be really honest with you guys. I don't use these hardly at all, and when I do, I don't like them. I'd rather use bore gauges, or I'd rather use a telescoping gauge. I can get a telescoping gauge really tight. So I just have a problem getting my fingers in there correctly to get a good feel. For me, that's because I don't use them that often, but it is what it is. Right here is probably the coolest thing I own. Back in the 70s, I worked with some guys in the late 70s and 80s. These toolmakers that came up in the 60s all had one of these, the Greist micro height gauge. And it reads up to 2 inches, and the way it works is every turn is 100 thousandths. Okay? Just like a pair of mics. It's like a pair of micrometers. All right, that's 0. So where would we be set right there? We're at 1 inch 100. All right, very accurate, and it's got a nice lapped base, and then there's an extension on it. It gets me another couple inches if I need it. Back in the day, and I've explained this before, but we'll do it again. We used to scribe a lot of lines. We didn't have CNC machines, all right? And when you had to do something that was curved, or a lot of times we would put a little line on an electrode to grind the draft back to. These were great. They didn't take up a lot of real estate on your surface plate, and they were just perfect for the job, and they fit in your toolbox. So, like I said, this is probably the coolest thing I own. I own a lot of cool stuff too, that's saying something. This is an empty box, okay? As we went through my micrometers drawer, this is the box for my step mics that were in here, right there. I'm not a big believer in keeping everything in a box when you already have it in a box. I might have already said that. This is a wooden box. Everything's good, all right? So I don't need to open my wooden box and open another box to get my tools out. I hope that makes sense, all right? That's my theory anyways, all right?
All right, let's move along to the
All right, my
bottom.
friends, that's it from here. Erie, Pennsylvania. We actually hit 44 degrees today. It's like a heat wave here. It was amazing. We'll see you on the next video, Journeyman Chapter 8. And again, please consider hitting the join button. Try me out for a month. See if you like what's there. And we'll see you soon, either there in the membership area or here for another manufacturing extravaganza.